Howdy, Fort Bend. William Ferguson coming to you today from the beautiful Seth in Sugar Land, Texas, from the Howdy Fort Bend studio. And I have a true friend, and I want to say friend because this friend is the guy that I know if something was wrong, I could call and he would be there. But also, he's a friend to our community. I'm going to introduce you to Jon Welch. Some of you may or may not know Jon Welch. He is a trustee, recently reelected to Lamar Consolidated School District position. And Jon Welch is known as being a little spicy. And Jon, welcome so much to being in the studio today.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful.
Super, super. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to have a little conversation with you. Now, I will tell you, because you said you had a chance to watch our interview from yesterday from a much more timid, kind,
Mr. Garcia.
Sweethearted, I'm going to use the right words.
Right.
Love him, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like Jon's a little more spicy, so I think we can have a little more fun with you. Is that okay?
We're going to have a lot more fun. If you watched Rick's interview with him, just skip through it, just go through it, and then get to this one. And then,
Rick is fun, and Rick is super, super kind. But what I've learned about them both is they have different leadership styles that all end in the same place, success for the kids. So that's certainly why I wanted to talk to you today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love how you always you'll study into a position that you may have on a school board issue, and then regardless of the storm that comes from it, you're steady, you're steadfast, and it's really fun to watch you stand and endure because you've studied the facts and not the emotions.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of our leaders today get hung up, to where they get caught up in the cacophony, the echo chamber of social media and all the people coming to the meetings speaking, trying to change their minds, and they're listening to the emotion of it, and they're not standing on the substance. And I try to study and inform myself, and I'd like to listen to all the opposing views, whether it's a political thing or whether it's a financial issue. Yeah. And I like to come down on the side that I think is the best, and thank the good Lord that none of us are individuals making the only decision, because there's a body of 7 of us, and it's not just one person's decision. You got to come together as a group, just like you do on the city council.
So, that's a great point. I don't want a king.
We don't want a king.
Yeah, that's why we fought against that a long time ago. Let's not have a king. Let's have a body that makes the right decision for our community.
Right.
Now, something that came out of our conversation yesterday, and I think that you've done well with it, Dr. Lalani, and I think this is the third time since you brought up what you just did, the third time I'm going to quote what Dr. Lalani said here one day. He said, when we are elected, the people are not giving us power. They're not giving us authority. What they're doing is they're giving us their trust. And I think that means a lot. And I know you wear their trust on your sleeve just like I do. And that way, when someone has a concern, they know you've already considered what is most likely best for them and the kids, minus the emotions. The emotions are what clouds the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that was just a thought I had that Dr. Lalani had shared, and I just love always falling back on. We really have gained the trust of a community. Now we have to honor the trust.
Yeah. And there's a lot of I read a lot of early American history. I love the founding of our nation. We had some mistakes, but we've gone through the process of correcting most of those mistakes. There's this debate about a congressman in early America. Is a congressman supposed to go to D.C. or the nation's capital to represent the views of the people and come back and get their opinions and then go vote that way? Or are we just going to send the individual we think best, and he or she makes that decision on our behalf? And there's that tension in there, because, you send people and they go, well, they don't represent me anymore.
Right.
It's like, well, you sent them up there because of all the candidates, you thought they best represented you and the community, and you have to trust them to make the best judgment while they're there. And that's how I think it is on the school board too, is that, folks don't really care about school boards until there's an issue with their kid or with
big or small,
and especially like the COVID thing and the whole mask that stirred up a lot of dust in the community. But they don't really care, so they're thinking that we just want people to just solve the problem, just get our kids to school on time, just teach them reading, writing, and arithmetic, and send them home safe. And so they're trusting us to make the right financial decisions, the right staffing decisions, the right academic decisions. And, I'm doing my best to be accountable to the people. And I'm very proactive on social media, trying to give the community feedback that they're not going to get from the administration. Because the administration is very good at giving stuff like, we got parent open house and we got this kind of thing happen at this campus. It's not their role to give board level information to the public. And that's what I try to do. I try to say, what would I want to know if I'm that voter out there? And I like, oh yeah, we voted for this guy a couple of months ago. I wonder what they're doing. Right. What is that information? What is he reading? What are the decisions they're dealing with? That's what I like to try to communicate to the public.
Well, sadly, to interrupt on that thought, how many people? So, how long have you been on the board?
In dog years or human?
In human years, how many years have you been?
4.5.
So you've been on 4.5 years. So I think you can give me a real number because I think I have a number as well. How many people from the community? How many students are in your school district, plus or minus?
45,000.
So 45,000 plus or minus. Wow, doesn't that make a crazy number? Here's a crazy number. That makes about plus or minus 90,000 parents.
Yep.
For the 45. So here's where I'm going with that. How many of the 90,000 parents in 4.5 years have attempted to walk in the door and have a conversation with you?
Oh, very small percentage.
1? 5?
If even that. You talk about actual numbers of people?
Actual physical people that want to walk in and meet with you.
Oh, probably 10.
See, here's
8 to 10 maybe.
Yeah, so people, the 90,000, if they happen to watch one day, they don't realize that. They don't. They probably think. I think most people think, even in council. I represent 120,000 people. Very, very rarely does someone ever reach out.
Yeah.
Even like in an email, I don't know about you. I may get 5 emails a week regarding concerns, usually about trash or something that is out of my fingers. Yeah. But going back to you, what I want people to realize is, a great man I met recently, and I'm curious, and I can't believe I'm asking this to you right now, but a great man, a great leader in our community. I saw him one day for lunch, sitting by himself at lunch, and I walked over to him and I stood there and talked with him for a few minutes, and he asked me, he said, "What do you think about your position in council?" I said, "Oh, I've enjoyed it, blah, blah, blah." And here was his question. He said, "Isn't it lonely?" And it was the first time someone hit on how I feel in council. To me, it feels extremely lonely. And what I mean by that is we've been asked to make decisions for men, women, and children, and in their absence.
Yes.
John, do what is best for the men, women, and children in our absence.
Yes.
And it's a weird feeling. And when he said that, he hit it on the head. I said, yes, it's lonely.
Yeah, it is.
It's lonely.
Now, do you have a lot of good collaboration with your fellow council members? Do y'all?
I'm not quite sure how the school board works. We are super cautious about any kind of quorum rules. And I mean, like, super cautious. Right. And so I can talk to 2, but I can't talk to 3.
That's exactly the Texas Open Meetings Act is the law we're talking about. And
it's so what makes it difficult, and you all know this. So if we're working on an issue, an agenda issue in the city, and I'm aware of it, and I'm gonna make one up. We want to paint the trees blue, okay? Okay. We're talking about blue trees. Well, here's what's interesting. I have to be very careful because if I had talked to one about the blue trees, I better remember which one, because if I talk to second and third, and all of a sudden you're violating. So the funny thing is we don't talk much. We will kind of pick up on what people are saying or doing, but it's rare that we actually talk about issues. We simply rely on our understanding of our community, our understanding of how the city functions, and we move in that direction.
Yeah. Well, Lamar is an interesting school district. We are one of the fastest growing in the state right now.
Yeah.
I mean, people
why.
People are pouring into Fort Bend County. Well, they're pouring into Texas, and then when they're pouring into Texas, they're coming to Fort Bend County. And when they're coming to Fort Bend County, they're coming to Lamar.
West Side.
Because we, unlike the city of Sugar Land and unlike Fort Bend ISD, that does not cover all of Fort Bend County.
Don't mess with Rick.
unlike them, we are huge geographically, 385 square
Get
miles.
outta here.
43% of the county is our footprint. So we are not even halfway built out. So we dwarf Fort Bend ISD, not
170 square miles.
not yet right, not in student population. So they're
Wow.
twice our size, but we're going to
Wow.
catch them in about 10, 15 years because that's how much growth is happening.
Unbelievable.
We're adding over 2,000 students a year.
Wow.
And so one of the things is that a lot of people say that we are ISDs, independent school districts. I always tease the couple of state reps that I know that we really need to change the law and take out the I from the ISD because we're really not that independent after all. We have the federal government has laws that affect us. We have the state of Texas, the legislature. We have the TEA that sends down regulations. They have the effect of law. And then we get to where the local decision makers can make decisions, for each individual district. So we're really not that independent after all.
I want to add to that. Can I add to the list? You started a list.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Are there teachers associations piled into that? They kind of try to steer things.
They can steer things from the TEA level or just
level,
putting public pressure on us.
Because I read about some of the pressures you guys are from special interests all over the place. Yeah.
And one of the things that maybe the public doesn't know is that I'm a volunteer. The state law prevents any school board member in Texas from being paid. So we are doing this. All of us are doing this just for the sake of wanting to be abused. I'm just kidding.
So do you realize Rick has one up on you unless you help me here in a second?
Oh, how's that?
He's also a member of an HOA board.
When I was elected in 2019, I was on my HOA.
Oh, my goodness.
And I served for 2 years.
We've all done it.
I finished my term. I didn't want to quit because I got on the school board. So I did them both simultaneously for 2 years, and I rolled off my HOA as well.
Me
So
too.
I know, Rick, about that. And a lot of us are getting our starts, and that's a great place to learn.
Sure.
When you love civics, when you love being involved and
yeah.
going to meetings and stuff, and you don't know what to do, no one knows who you are.
Get on the board.
Best place to start is your HOA. And it doesn't mean you have to get elected right away. Just start going to the meetings. Just start being involved. Like, how much money is it going to take to replace the perimeter fence? Right. Hey, are we going to build another swimming pool?
And
or are we
the
not
people in the community love you if you're on the board, right?
Yeah, you're right.
About as much as they love you on the school board.
Right. Yeah.
Well, so we'll get into your future plans in a minute.
Okay.
But I'm hoping this isn't where it ends as a board member. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yep.
So, Jon, you have been in a mild term spicy on social media.
Yeah.
And the reason I was so excited to have you here is I feel a little spicy. You're a lot spicy, so I would be considered mild, okay? And I got to tell you, I think it's helped you. I may be wrong. You tell me what you think. How has it helped or benefited your position on the school board to be so direct over issues?
Well, I make a lot of enemies. I'll tell you that.
I can imagine.
So I don't know if the word helped is a proper.
I'm trying here.
I'll tell you my philosophy behind it, and then we can come back to that.
Okay.
Rush Limbaugh, I listened to him for 30 years. Great political insight. He used to say that one side of the political establishment in the country will push 10 steps one way, and the other side will get so up in arms and try to push back and beat them back 6 spaces. And then we will claim it's a victory. Meanwhile, the other side's gotten 4 spaces, and they've gotten what they want. So my approach is, instead of being only fighting on the defensive, why not go on the offensive?
Yes.
And it's not offensive stuff
ground.
that's crazy. It's offensive stuff that's just everyday common value stuff.
Right.
And one of the biggest things I've gotten in, quote unquote, in trouble for, and I've stand by it to this day, and it's still on my social media.
Spicy warning.
Here we go. Is that I said a shout out to all the men and women who have relationships on June 1st, 2023 on my social media, and it caused a storm. It got on Channel 11. The Houston Chronicle did a story on it, and they wanted to come interview me about it. And then somebody in my school district, one of my fellow board members, put out a statement against me about it. All I was doing is praising a man loving a woman and a woman loving a man, just kind of.
I was going to say, I think I just missed something because it went like this.
That's all it is.
What's the big deal?
Well, You tell me what is now in social media and in corporate America. That's the biggest problem.
Right.
Corporate America. What is the month of June now to them?
I feel awful right now. I don't know.
Well, it's the LGBTQ Pride Month.
Okay. I had no. Okay.
Well,
and so
no one's saying that they can't have pride for that, but it's also before
Sure.
that a traditional month for men and women to get married.
There you go.
June is a. So I was just trying to say, hey, I'm going to celebrate this, and I
Wow. Well, he didn't say that here.
I'm not about getting in anybody's bedroom or any of that kind of stuff.
I know.
I'm just saying, hey, why can't we? And it caused a storm because I don't know. People thought that I was trying to. It was nothing anti. It was a pro statement.
And look, I didn't even have that to pick on you about. I should have read deeper.
Yeah, but just stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I got you.
The vulgarity in the books.
Yeah.
It's
my
not
goodness.
about, that's been an issue that
my
I've
goodness,
stood
yeah.
very strong on.
Sure.
I tried to get more board transparency, taking the TEA's recommendation, and I'm not the only political conservative on our board, but I was the only one that would stand up and try to give more board transparency than what we voted for. I was outvoted 6-1, and there's some board members that are on the board now that were not there then. But I don't understand why they don't want more transparency, like buying books for our libraries. I mean, you wouldn't believe the kind of stuff that's in the school libraries or that was prior to HB 900 passing last semester. You wouldn't believe it. I thought it was stuff about like a boy likes a girl and maybe they're kissing under the stadium on a Friday night or under the bleachers on a Friday night. I thought it was that kind of mild kind of stuff. You would not believe the language in the library books, and there's people out there that want to keep that stuff in the books for minors. It's not a First Amendment issue.
I got you.
And I stand up in that, and I don't
got you.
apologize
I
for
got
it. This
you.
is not a First Amendment. No one's saying you can't write and publish that. We're talking about libraries for minors.
Well,
and
you just brought up First Amendment. So
Yeah.
we should all know that the First Amendment protects the people from the government,
Yes.
not protecting the government from the people.
Yes.
That's an absolute. So with that said, when it comes to book purchasing, I'm assuming those are public dollars that are being used. So at what point do you say, we're not going to use public dollars for these types of books? I don't know. I just know there's got to be a line there somewhere. Otherwise, you would just have, correct me if I'm wrong, you would have Penthouse magazines or whatever adult magazines. I mean, because you've crossed some line somewhere from education to whatever that publication is. So, and I'm not here trying to explain that. I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of folks in our society, locally and in the macro sense, that want that kind of stuff in our school libraries because they say that's real life and our kids need to be exposed to it. Well, my argument is, well, they can be exposed to it at home.
Sure.
That's not my business.
Sure.
That's not the school's business. But as far as what the school is condoning, there's so much good literature and there's so many good stories and there's so much good nonfiction out there. Why would we pollute our libraries with that kind of crap?
Wow.
I mean, over the top vulgarity. You would not, I could not read it on this program. And it's some of that kind of stuff is in our libraries.
You mean I would have to come up with one of those buttons that would beep it out?
There's been parents that have come and read that stuff in boardrooms. We had one parent that did it in our boardroom. At KDISD had a lot. And they were trying to warn all the minors in the room. You might want to, the parents.
Even though it's in the library.
It's in the library. They were saying that one of the KDISD guy says, parents, you might want to take your students that are in the room out because I understand there's going to be some vulgarity read. And these are books in their own schools.
That sounds like a line you're crossing. Yeah, let that go. Hey, anyhow, I'm not trying to make that decision. That's up to board members.
Yeah.
Wow. I recently heard something about a book, without going into detail, that is being considered, and it becomes an attack on a religion or a spiritual leader, and then it adds the sexual connotations and all these other things. And my first question was, are we teaching that in school? If we're teaching it, it needs to stay in school. If we're not teaching it, there's no purpose for it. Now, put it in the public library. But and again, this is an emotional response, not a factual response. If you're teaching a subject I really think you need to have a book in the library related to the subject in some way.
Yeah.
Now, some people will say, what about health? They teach health or whatever. Okay, well, you find books related to health. I don't know. All I know is there is a line. Otherwise, they wouldn't have to issue a warning before reading it.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm with you there.
And the legislature's taken this up, and the state legislature.
Oh, well,
the last
there you
session.
go.
Yeah, and they passed a bill, HB 900, that addresses this, but it's not always filtered down yet to the local libraries in each school. So,
all right. Well, I'm not going to make him dwell on this any longer. But what a subject! No wonder you're spicy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just common sense to me, and it just tells you that we are not. And people don't like to think like this. We are not as a united society as we like to believe.
Yeah, we want to be until it makes us uncomfortable.
Yeah, and when you have a mixture, such a diverse mix of, I'm not talking skin color, of worldviews, of belief systems coming together, and then we're all funding one program where we're sending our minor children to.
Wow,
it gets really.
So you just made me think of something. So when you talk about worldviews. So these are the mix, the ingredients, if I may, in our community. We have different racial groups. We have cultural groups. We have now you've thrown in worldview groups. You just keep going and going, right? And so how do you make them all happy? And I think I have a rule of 3 that ultimately helps me in conversations all the time, and that is there are 3 things that everybody wants. I don't care who you are. There are 3 things everybody wants. 1, they want to be safe. So they want their children safe. They want to be safe at school, at home, wherever they want to be safe. Everybody wants to be safe. Second thing, they want to be respected.
Yep.
I think that we can manage to respect everyone. And then the third thing is everybody wants opportunities. Beyond that, I'm not saying there are not other similarities, but beyond that, you start to fraction the mass because everybody wants 3 things. And then maybe there's a 4th. It's starting to get gray. And then it changes. So I think you're onto something. And as I think of your style, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to brand you something because I feel like I am this. I believe I am a liberal thinker in the sense of I will take and absorb any idea you have, any lifestyle. You tell me that, and I'll absorb that liberal.
Yeah.
However, my default on spending is always conservative.
Yeah.
It's just who I am. How can we save a little? Do we need to spend that much? And I think you fall somewhere near that category as well because that's how I decide most of my decisions.
Well, I'll tell you this. A lot of folks, I think the phrase open-mindedness is misunderstood.
Sure.
What is open-mindedness? I mean, you can ask yourself that at home. What does it mean to be open-minded? Open-mindedness does not necessarily mean acceptance.
That's it. I agree.
It has become that to some in our culture. Well, you're just a closed-minded bigot. You're just a homophobe.
You're going to get that everywhere.
So, in my understanding, in my classical thinking of critiquing and problem solving, I want to be open to the ideas that you're going to share, that he's going to share, that she's going to share. I want to hear the crazy stuff if that's part of the conversation legitimately. Doesn't mean I have to accept it. Doesn't mean I think that's valid and we need to run with it.
Right.
But I'm processing
I want to hear it.
I'm putting it into the hopper, and I'm kind of mixing it in going, yeah, that's really a bunch of BS.
So
now, maybe I won't say that, but maybe my decision is, you know what, I understand it critically. I still disagree with it, and I'm going to go with this path instead of that path. And I think that's where we get off in our society today because I think there's maybe a lack of critical thinking. And I'm not talking about necessarily when you sit down with an individual and have coffee with them. I'm talking about in mass, because the masses they're led by the headlines and they see something on Twitter or X or Facebook and they want to run with it because they want to run to our meetings and they want to say, why are y'all doing this at one of those schools and why are you doing that at the city council? And it's like, wait a minute, you're not understanding the full picture here. That wasn't the case. You know, we nipped that in the bud before it got to that level. But the person who was telling you about it didn't explain that. And
well, I'm going to lay something on you, and you made me pull up a definition.
Oh, do it.
You weren't expecting that as
Lay
a
it on
school
me.
board member. Here's your definition.
I got a definition on my phone
of the word liberal.
Okay.
You ready? By the way, you're now a liberal.
Okay.
By the way.
Well, in the political sense, yeah, I need to hear the definition
Here
first.
you go.
All right, let's do it.
willing to respect or accept behavior, willing to respect or accept behavior, or opinions different from one's own, open to new ideas. In that definition, I believe that I am liberal-minded. I will not accept all ideas. I have some stuff thrown at me, even on city council. I look at them and go, where did you get that, right? But for the most part, what I'm not is closed-minded. I listen to everything.
Yeah.
The people screaming will normally not listen to everything. They'll listen to their perspective only.
Yeah.
And
agree.
I think you fall into the same category.
Yeah, and I tell you this: in the last 12 months, I have gone to meet for drinks with two different groups. One was another individual, and another one was two individuals. And I met them one-on-one, one-on-two, just to have drinks and just to look each other in the eye and have a civil conversation. And I left both conversations where they didn't agree with me and I didn't agree with them, but we respect one another and we know where we're coming from.
Right.
And we haven't taken as many shots at each other on social media. Well, them more at mine because they were coming onto my page. So I'm very active on Facebook and X and LinkedIn.
I know. I read you.
Yeah. So if anybody's interested, Jon Welch, Lamar CISD, just look me up.
Just remember, spicy warning. So
it's not that spicy. He keeps exaggerating.
Yeah, not spicy bad, spicy good, spicy fun. Hey, do you remember the name Sri Kulkarni? Sri Kulkarni ran for Congress.
Okay.
Sri Kulkarni is a very Democrat-driven, what I would refer to as a blue candidate. Sri Kulkarni is from our community. He has thousands and thousands of followers. He and I could not differ more on political ideas or decision. Couldn't differ more. And I remember we had lunch again one day, and I took a selfie with him. I said, "Can I take a selfie with you?" And I wrote a post with Sri Kulkarni, and it said something to the effect, I could not disagree with him more, and yet he is not my enemy.
Yeah.
And I wish people would understand it's okay that we disagree.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's nice when we're respected and heard, but it's okay to disagree.
Yeah.
And Sri has always been great for me that way. He keeps my mind open, and I can disagree, and he can look at me and say, I disagree with you, and we're okay.
Yeah.
We're not enemies.
Well, I agree with that, and that goes back to, and I'm sure there's a lot of examples before this, but the Tip O'Neill, Ronald Reagan.
Oh.
You know, they could share a beer, but then they were on opposite sides during the daytime. But I tell you this: in my time in Lamar in the boardroom, I can't tell you how many times on. It's like the Supreme Court. The United States Supreme Court usually votes together most of the cases.
Sure.
It's only on the quote unquote controversial cases where there's the 5-4 split.
Sort of a tear.
It's kind of like that in most school boards, and it has been that way in my time in Lamar. And so the times that I have stood alone, I mean, I'm fighting. We're arguing for several months. I don't mean fighting, arguing. I mean debating.
Right.
And then it comes down to the vote, and I'm pleading my case one last time, and I'm losing 6-1. And okay, it's off the table. On to the next topic.
Next.
I'm not holding it against you.
Yeah, we're not enemies.
We're not enemies. And
Isn't that beautiful?
Let's move on. And I have conducted myself that way, trying to keep a smile on my face as I go. And I've had some people say, hey, I really appreciate how you've handled yourself there.
Well,
and
I got to tell you, as we're winding down, I got to tell you this. Of all the conversations you and I have ever had, and we've had a lot of conversations, I cannot, and I'm saying this to the world, I cannot remember a single time where you were negative, condescending, rude, anything at all with anyone not in our conversation. Okay, and by the way, that goes a long way with me on character building.
Yeah.
If you're willing to attack a person's character, especially when they're not around, you worry me, you concern me, and so I would look at you if you were attacking. We're giving Rick a hard time, right? If you were attacking Rick, I would tell you you're out of line.
Sure.
Literally, I may not even air this right away. I would talk to Rick first, but it's that important. So I want everyone to know, as solid as you are in your decision making, I have never heard him one time speak poorly or negatively about anyone. Maybe issues, we might get frustrated over issues, but but I've never heard you attack an individual, and I absolutely love that about you. I respect you for that.
I appreciate that.
Because I've read some stuff they're throwing at you. I was like, oh, my God.
Yeah, I've been called a despicable human being and some other stuff like that.
Yeah.
But if you keep it about the substance and the subject and you don't get personal, it's easy. When you realize, and that's the problem with us flawed humans, is that we want to like, that jerk doesn't agree with me. Well, he must bad hair day. He sucks, whatever. So and we have to. It's the self-control. We have to be adults.
One of my favorite lessons, and Joe's going to kill me. Our mayor, Joe Zimmerman, who I have learned so much from Joe. I had an issue one day with some practices going on and. Within the city, and there was a flyer, a document that was on the table, and I picked it up and I tossed it on the table and I threw it down on the table, and I just let them have it. How I felt about it, right? And I'll never forget the lesson I had coming. It was almost, what do they call it? The uncle lesson. Anyhow, I'll think of the word in a minute. But I remember Joe, the mayor, looked at me and he said, "William, when you're finished with the emotions, can we discuss the facts?" And I remember looking at him in front of all those people going, I needed that. I needed him to rein me in.
Yeah.
He did it. He allowed me to turn my emotions into the facts, and it turned the whole conversation around.
Yeah.
So I get it. I get when people get upset. I get when people protest. I get it. It's very emotional. But when it's factual, it changes everything.
Yeah, and it does. And those are healthy protests too, if it's done in the right way.
Right.
I will own the stuff that I vote for and that I say.
Right.
And I'm open to criticisms. I've said some things and done some things in the boardroom or made some comments, and I'm like, you know what? I probably should have checked myself a little more on that. I'm not above criticism. I'm my own critic here. I'm trying to process this and live in real time.
Yeah, I'll give you a hard time.
Yeah, I know you will, Mr. City Councilman.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, exactly. All right, so John, I'm gonna flip your camera on. If there are any thoughts you might have, maybe like you did earlier, you gave information regarding how people, if they ever want to have a conversation with you, how they communicate with you.
Yeah.
Anything like that you may want to share with them?
Yeah, look me up on social media. My email is also on the Lamar website. I would implore all of you who are halfway interested in civics to not do what I did for so long, which is just listen to the radio and go to political meetings and be, one of those guys that stands in the back of the room. I tried to get involved. My family life didn't allow me at the time. And maybe that's your situation as well. And we can't help that. That's the most important. We gotta support our family. We have to be involved. But if you have the time, don't just rant and rave on Facebook. Get involved in your HOA and get involved in the school district, even if you don't have kids in the school district, because you're paying the taxes. Mm-hmm. There's a place for you. There's a place you can volunteer. There's a place where you can affect the budgets. There's a place where you can affect who and the kind of folks that are hired. And I'm sure there's opportunities in the local city government and stuff too. But my view was always in the past nationally, and this has really made me focus in the last 4 years on what's happening locally and on the state level. And so I think it's a little bit easy to kind of get lost in like, I don't like Biden, I don't like Trump, and then kind of go about our business. But there's so much that happens on the local level that affects your life as much or more than what they do in D.C. So it's imperative that we're involved on the local level. So I would encourage you all to do that.
You know what? Somehow, I knew you were going to have to bring up the words Biden and Trump. I don't know how I knew that.
Yeah.
Hey, so guys, you heard it from his mouth. John, thank you for your service to our community. I've said for years now, what happens nationally, it almost feels like it's not my concern anymore. What happens nationally will be shaped by the decisions we make locally. Yeah. And as you shape a school district, just like I told Rick yesterday, I believe that you have a stronger or a deeper hand in shaping the future of our community by touching the children and their education. And so I commend you and all your board for that. You guys are going to make the wrong decision and the right decision, just like us. It's part of being human. I call for blessings on your school district, on every kid. I just pray that they have a fabulous school year. Summer will be here before long,
not too
and
far
they'll
away.
get to graduate into next year. And a reminder, and you can reinforce this as we sign off. Rick brought up the need or necessity. I want to make sure we highlight that of reading,
Yeah.
the talent of reading, just reading anything, reading low level reading books, high level reading, but whatever. Read.
Yeah.
Because those that are successful read.
Yes.
And so, as an educator, Rick brought that up yesterday. I think he said if they're not reading by the third grade, they start to decline in their potential for success.
Yeah.
And so, I challenge every mom, dad, child, read something every day other than a meme on your phone or your iPad. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll give you this. My dad was a reader. My dad's in heaven now, but he used to read all the time. And my older brother and I would on a Friday night. We're like young preteens. We used to say, "Oh, Dad, it's so boring. How do you want to just sit here on the couch and read a book? It's Friday night." We thought, "Hey, we're supposed to go out and have this incredible wild time." And we would say, "It's so dull." He goes, "Boys, you don't like to read because you're reading the wrong kind of books."
Oh.
And I did not learn to appreciate that until I got out of high school. And I did not like reading in school. But when I got out of high school, I read all the time now. I always have a book going. If you see me and you say, "What are you reading?" I always have a book that I'm going through because I love it. So my challenge is, if your kids don't like to read or they only want to read social media, maybe you need to expose them to some different kind of books, because there's such a variety out there now. Or maybe even not a book, maybe like a magazine that they're interested in, that like mechanics, or I don't know, airplanes, aviation. There's all kind of stuff out there that's good to keep the juices flowing in their head, and to not just be on their dang device all the time.
Well, I knew I could get him stirred up for another minute. But anyhow, thank you, John. I'm going to sign off like I always do. Howdy, Fort Bend, and we will